I have. No, Laura, sorry. I have.
Hello, everyone. We will go ahead and get started or call the meeting to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag's over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will go ahead and do roll call, and we will just do it up here around the table.
Sarah Darting.
Christy Van Meter.
Lauren Tice-Miller.
Sheila Magers.
Sarah Sanders.
Rocky Buznitz.
Buck Reuter.
Kristen Fisher.
Okay, thank you. We will, or I would accept a, I guess, has everybody been able to look at the agenda? Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Christy, second by Rocky. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, next we will review the minutes from the February 2nd regular meeting. Are there any discussion items? If not, I would accept a motion to approve.
Buckle motion.
Okay, motion by Buck, second by Christy. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. All right, next up. Communications. We have a site council report by Barretton Elementary. Mrs. Burvert.
Is this an open place to present? Where would you like me? Up by the screen? Okay. All right, good evening. So every year when we come to you, we're excited to kind of share something different. So tonight we are going to focus on Board Goal 5. All district administrators will proactively attract and retain the highest quality staff members to support our students. So in just a second, we are going to test and see just how well each of you know our Barryton staff who have been here for a long time, and Dr. Hurla is going to explain a game.
You will all get a whiteboard. You will get the opportunity to guess our numbers. All right. The Kagan structure is called Showdown. And so you will write your guess at the number. You're all guessing numbers tonight. All right. Here we go.
Sure. I think you all got it. You ready?
Okay.
Got everything you need? All right. When you have your answer, it's called chin your board. It looks like this, so nobody can see it. And then we'll say showdown and you'll show. Okay.
Chin it facing us?
Yes, so because you're not showing. All right. Number of the keys of excellence. Right. How many keys? All right, showdown. Oh, excellent. It is 8. It is 8. And this is important because these are our guiding principles for Barryton. All of our staff and students live by the 8 keys of excellence.
All right, our next question. How many students do you think are currently enrolled at Barryton? Take a second. And when you have that guess, put your board against your body. All righty, and showdown. Dr. Hurla, will you reveal the answer? 539 is our current enrollment. Lots of close guesses.
All right. The number of full-time certified staff members. So that would be teachers, special education, certified staff members full-time. All right, showdown. We have 45 at Barryton.
Some of you are really close. All right, our next question, this one let me explain it a little bit, is the number of staff members that we have who are on either building committees or district committees of any kind. Any guess is okay. You are counting individuals who are on at least one. Yeah. Right. Yep. She's just a one, Herla. Correct. Good way to say it. Showdown. So 22. So about half of our certified staff members are on some kind of building or district committee.
Oh, this is the key to staff retention right here. We usually come back. Number of staff who are also Shawnee Heights graduates. All staff at Berryton.
We have total about 90 staff. Okay. With all of our parents.
Okay.
And part-time staff.
Showdown.
All right. The number of staff members at Berryton who are also quantum learning facilitators. What would that number be? So these are the people who do the presentations to all of our new staff members and then do some for second year staff. All right, showdown. Ooh, great job. Lots of sixes. Way to go.
He was trying to be without going over. $1. Yep. Come on down.
All right, at Berryton, the number of staff members who hold a master's degree. They are all masters. They're very masterful. But this is also something that's really important to Shawnee Heights. We promote master's degrees. We help with your tuition costs. We move on the salary scale as soon as you have it. It's great for retention. All right, showdown. 31.
The number of students who will perform for you in just a few months in drama club. What is that number? Take a guess. And showdown. Ooh, all over the place. Some really close guesses. Someone at 35, very close. Or 36, yeah. Good job, Mrs. Meggers.
All right. The number of teachers who have their ELL endorsement at Berryton. I keep trying to hand it to you early. Showdown. 18. That means that we can choose from 18 of our teachers. It's great because sometimes that's really tricky when you're trying to place students.
The number of daily afternoon bus routes coming from the bus barn. How many routes is that? Yeah. Coming to Berryton. How many bus routes are coming? In the afternoon only. Got a lot of roads out here. That's true. Yep. Someday. All right, and showdown. Oh, some great guesses. 16. You guys were right on it. Way to go.
All right, the number of general education classrooms. – markers. And showdown. 24.
The number of staff members who are going through a program to become literacy fellows with Kansas State University. How many would that be? And showdown. Okay. The number is 3, and we're really proud of those 3.
Oh, this is another good one. The number of staff members who are also either current parents or former parents and grandparents of Barryton students. So several of our staff members are tied to a current student or they sent their students through Barryton.
Yep, out of the 90.
Yep. So they're currently employed, but like Mrs. Hurla has already sent her kids through Barryton, but we counted me in this. All right, showdown. Half our staff.
So we want to just share with you a few quick things that we've been working on. This past summer, Dr. Hurla, Beth Baldwin, and I attended a PLC conference, professional learning conference in Minneapolis. And one of the things that they really encouraged us to do was to really fine-tune our mission and our vision. So we want to share a little bit of that with you tonight. So we had staff, all of our certified and our classified staff really kind of help us wordsmith what we really believe is our vision, what we're shooting for at Barryton. So what we have is that our vision is to be a school where buffaloes are valued and empowered to build relationships, and they're confident in reaching their goals.
And our mission, which was also a very long process, and our mission's what we're currently trying to do at Barryton, and that is to create a safe and supportive space where buffaloes can grow, take risks, and become lifelong learners.
Finally, we want to share with you our collective commitments or our common commitments. Dr. Hurla kind of gave us the example from Southwest Airlines of just how we want to show up, how we want to show up individually, how we want to show up for each other, and then how we want to show up as a collective school. We'll have you take a second to look at these and answer any questions you might have. What questions can Dr. Hurla or I answer at this time?
Any questions from the group? I have a question.
Sure.
So on the vision and mission, was it the 3 of you went to the conference, then did the 3 of you work on that? Or you had your building leader or
The
all of them?
entire staff. So
Okay.
that was one of the first things we did when we had our certified staff was we had staff get into small groups, but all of our certified staff worked on that. And then when we had our classified staff come back, we had them look at that and we shared kind of where we were at, our rough draft. And so they then shared their feedback. And so and then at the September PD, September 29th, we came back to it and just looked at it again after some time to see, is this still really representative of who we are and what we want to be?
Our task, we kept using Southwest as our example. I mean, I like when Britain is using Nike's Just Do It because we wanted something that simple. Can you believe that fits on a sentence strip? So it was a poster sentence strip, and they had to fit it on that. And then we did something similar with dots, like we have done with the strategic planning, where they went around and you just kind of saw what would rise to the top as most collective. there were some really good ones. And then this is what we landed on. And then our leadership team even wordsmithed it some more. We took it to our site council as well, where they helped us clarify some things. It's amazing how much your words matter when you're picking it out, because everybody's super careful about that.
And then I have one other quick question. So how does your mission statement play into like things that you've maybe changed specifically this year to fit your new mission?
Sure. We've tried to make it far more visible because we realized that we could not state what ours was prior to this, any of us really. And we knew that I had at least been there when we created it before. So we worked really hard to make it more visible. So it is in every newsletter that we send. We talk about it often with our leadership team. We've put it on a lot of things.
I would say the other major component of this is our time and deciphering what things are worth our time. And if activities or conversations or initiatives specifically focus on that, then that's kind of a way for us to gauge if it's worth our time and how much time, like how closely does that align to our mission and our vision.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for hosting us tonight. Okay. I don't think we have any comments from district patrons, so we will move on to action items, business by consent. Are there any items for discussion, or if not, I would accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Rocky, second by Sarah. All in favor? 6-0, motion carries. Okay, moving on to the Smart Motorcycle Rider Education Agreement, and that, I believe, is Ms. Meggers.
This is the Smart Motorcycle Agreement. We've had this in place for a number of years. They use our parking lot and one classroom to teach some motorcycle training, kind of like driver's ed, but for motorcycles. And this would be the agreement that would start January 1st, 2026 and go through this current calendar year, so through December 31st, 2026. If you read the agreement, they keep 90% of the fees that they charge, but we get 10% for being the host. So it's not something new. We've done it for a long time. We would recommend approval.
Motion by Lauren,
Second.
second by Beck. All in favor? 6-0. Next is approve KASB policy updates. Ms. Meggers.
Okay, these are the ones that we didn't seem to have a lot of questions on last time, but I'll do a real quick, if you want to click on that link. The first one is the changes again are in red, the suggested updates from KASB's attorneys. And this one just prohibits recording during executive session unless it's part of like a student hearing or something like that. Otherwise, it makes it a criminal act. The next one is on memberships. The board may maintain membership in the Kansas Association of School Boards, and it drops off the part that KASB needs to be a member of the National School Board Association. Policy IKB is on controversial issues, and it's just saying that teachers are discouraged from expressing personal viewpoints during class and need to stick. They can talk about current topics, but need to stick to the curriculum. It's just been added on to. The next one, this policy drops all wording, drops AIDS out of this wording. It's human sexuality education, and that wording has just changed since, I'm assuming this has been in there for several decades, and they're just updating that to match what that curriculum actually has in it. The next page is just the form that it goes with that. JQI adult students. This just clarifies some wording and says that for students to graduate from high school, adult students, they need to complete the credits required to attain a high school diploma, and this is determined by administration and applicable law. So it's just really clarifying that. That looks a little different than it, again, did probably 10, 20 years ago because of electronic options. And then, or virtual. Visitors to the school. This is a policy we updated, I think, in the summer, but they've added now that visitors to the school, so if we have off-duty law enforcement officers, the school can just ask to see identification to confirm that. And then that is it. So if, first of all, are there any questions on those?
I actually have a couple of questions, but I don't want to put you on the spot. I apologize. It took me a little while to reread and digest everything. So if I could request that we pull IKB so I can submit those questions to you for some additional information before we vote on it, if that would be permissible to the rest of the board.
Okay, IKB is regarding the controversial issues.
Yes.
Is there any other discussion?
When we reviewed these last time, was there not another policy in here pertaining to bullying?
Those are at the end of
Did
the
I just
meeting.
miss it?
It's
Yeah.
a separate
Got it.
action item
Yeah.
on
Thank
the
you.
agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah. Which is why I'm requesting this be pulled, because we had set those aside till we could get some additional information. So we would still have to bring those back to consider again. So would just request if we could add IKB, and then I'll submit questions so they can be shared.
Any other discussion? Okay, so I would accept a motion to approve the KASB policy updates excluding IKB. Motion by Christie,
Second.
second by Buck. All in favor? 6-0, motion passes. Okay. Next up, we have approved the 2026-2027 school calendar. Ms. Smeggers.
Attached is the draft that we shared last time as a discussion item. This calendar is for 26-27. It mirrors what we did this year. The only change being the workday over winter break is on the front end on that Monday, December 21st, rather than January 1st, because that fell on a holiday. So we just made a shift because of a holiday in there. Otherwise, it looks very similar to what we had this year. We would recommend approval unless there are any questions.
Motion by Sarah. Second by Lauren. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you, guys. Okay, we will now move on to the Skyward for, is it cumulative transition plan? They had to spell that with all the letters, didn't they?
Sorry I wasn't here. And sorry I wasn't here last time you guys reviewed this, but I think I got all your questions answered by email. Skyward worked on this and they authorized the 6% cap. And that was, I think, the only request that you guys made. I did negotiate terms more favorably for the district in other areas of the agreement as well. But if you had a chance to read through it, did you have additional questions? Nobody?
Nope, thank you for going back to him.
We were working on it clean up through today. That $750 SSL certificate, it's just a security certificate that gives us some additional features. And I didn't know if we had one or not or provided our own. And so when I got that information, we called them and had them submit a revised invoice. They don't charge it to districts if we provide our own. So it's slightly lower than it was originally at $23,365. So we'll make a motion. I mean, we will recommend, the district recommends your approval for $23,365 for the revised agreement with Skyward for the transition to cumulative, as well as the 3-year terms starting in 2027 through 2030.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? If not, I would accept a motion. Motion by Sarah. Second by Lauren. All in favor? 6-0. Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. Now we will move on to discussion item. Superintendent's report by Ms. Smeggers.
Okay, a couple things going on. We just finished parent-teacher conferences last week, and so I was a little bit quieter at the high school in the spring, but with student-led conferences. But we still had a pretty good turnout there. Definitely had a great turnout at all the elementary schools as we walked around. So it was good to see parents out and see the interactions taking place. Bond updates. Tucker was here at the last meeting, so not a lot to update you on. Currently, all of these are kind of lengthy things that take a while and lots of meetings. We're continuing to work on figuring out HVAC projects that can happen this summer. lots of groups and people looking at options on playgrounds, lots of playground meetings going on. And then we continue to meet with individual buildings on classrooms and projects and scheduling and just all the little pieces that take a lot of ironing out. So we'll bring you some things once we get them, but we're still kind of down in the weeds trying to figure out some details. Strategic plan, we sent an update. I sent an update Friday, but the focus group met on Monday. Their next meeting is next Monday, February 23rd. And again, we can have up to 3 board members attend. I don't know if you guys want to decide that here and volunteer here, or if you want to email if you're interested, but we can have up to 3 attend, and you just would intermix with the people, the community members that are there. You can help answer questions or just listen in. But that will be in the cafeteria again from 5:15 to 8 on this next Monday. And then I did visit with Britton Hart today. He's got some meetings scheduled in March with administrators and board leadership. And then I think it'll be April before we do a board work session with the full board. But as soon as we have that date, we'll share that with you. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Other than the notes you sent out about the strategic, other than the notes you sent out, have you gotten any feedback from district folks or
On
participants?
the community
The
focus groups.
strategic, uh-huh.
I did. I've heard from several people, but one was a teacher that during conferences I just happened to be visiting with, and that individual said, it was so great to hear the whole table talking. I know what these questions look like from my viewpoint in the classroom, but I had a parent and a community member, and it was just really good to hear all the different ideas that were shared. So I've heard good things from multiple people, but that one went really into a lot of detail about all the different perspectives, which is exactly what we're trying to capture. So.
Yeah, it was interesting reading the
good.
information you sent out. Thanks for sharing that. Any other questions or discussion on that? If not, we will move on to the KASB policy updates discussion. And that information is in the link in the agenda. And Ms. Meggers.
It is. These are the 2. Kristen, these are 2 of the, one of these you were referencing. Actually, there's 3 in here. The first one is religion in curricular or school-sponsored activities. KASB's recommendation was just they added that the school district really is responsible for ensuring proper notice and an opportunity to opt out. I did visit with KASB about the concerns we had last week or 2 weeks ago. What brought this front and center is that there was a school district that would not allow people to opt out. And so what we're doing, we talked kind of through our process currently, notifying if an issue is controversial or we suspect it might be controversial in any way, shape, or form, we are notifying parents and giving them the opportunity to opt out. So KSB was not concerned about that. We've also talked about maybe we add a form at enrollment just to see if there are any other topics. But so we can open that one up for discussion here in a minute. Let me go to the next one because it's pretty closely related. Right after that's the form. It also just mirrors that wording. The next policy just goes into a little bit more detail and just adds on that the board recognizes parents have the right to opt out. And so it brings in the opt-out option for activities or anything that goes against religious upbringing, that a family feels like goes against their upbringing. It doesn't allow a parent to opt a student out of an entire course, though, just out of maybe a section or a unit. So before we go on to the next one, do you want to have any discussion on that one?
I do have a question. So our existing policy and practice would meet or satisfy the requirements of the outcome of this Supreme Court case, right? So like we wouldn't necessarily have to adopt this language that KASB is addressing or is providing, because we already have an opt-out policy, right? And we already practice that. So ultimately, we wouldn't have to adopt this additional language.
I think it's just meant to clarify. So like I'm looking at partway through, it says parents should be notified in advance and given the opportunity to opt out. It's somewhat repetitive, but we really are doing this for the most part. So I don't know that we intend to change change that if we didn't adopt it. We are giving parents the opportunity to opt out. And we are, I think Christy shared an example last time, but we have multiple places where we are notifying parents of things.
Any other questions or discussion?
Quick question. Do we feel like we're, the changes in this policy is making it too restrictive for teachers? I believe the point was made before that there was concern that maybe a teacher wouldn't know about a religious exemption, and then we would then get ourselves into trouble that way.
And what KSB said on that is that as long as we're making the effort to try and get and if a parent says, hey, this is not an area I want my child to participate in, we're letting them opt out. They said there is no way to know every single thing. It's just, it was meant to clarify, is really what it was trying to do.
And I think my experience, just to kind of maybe help with that, like my experience, I think in high school in particular, is where maybe some of the more controversial like books and things have been, is the teacher's given a listing of all the materials they're going to cover that class. And so then it's really clear to me that if I have a concern with any of those materials, then I can talk to the teacher. And she was very clear, like this was an English teacher that was like, please let me know if you have concerns so we can talk through what alternatives are available. So I feel like the experiences I've had have been pretty clear cut that there is an alternative path. Just talk to the teacher. She's making it, or he will make it available. I don't know if every teacher does it that way.
So part of this will be one of the questions that I submit on IKB, the controversial issues, because I'm looking at how do these all kind of intertwine with each other. And if you have a discussion, because I remember in high school, many discussions coming about organically in the classroom, and you have a discussion and, you know, the teacher is encouraging that discussion and all sides are being presented, but it could be because the organic discussion is allowed, is that considered endorsement by the teacher? And then how does that also play into this policy of should somebody provide in this organic discussion a viewpoint that conflicts with another student's religion? How does that not put the teacher in hot water twice? Because both are board policies, and I have a lot of heartburn. I understand what is trying to be done here and the Sue happiness and the political climate that we are in, but I have a lot of heartburn over us adopting language that is proposed to us by KASB that has a tendency to lean more towards we got to cover all bases just in case, but what is that ultimately going to do in potentially stifling these organic conversations and discussions that ultimately contribute to critical thinking and learning in a classroom?
If I can, just on the, I don't know what page this is on, page 3, so the one that says CIF and IKD, it does articulate its planned classroom discussion, that it's a presentation or planned classroom discussion. So I don't know if that makes a difference in...
If you have a planned classroom discussion on a certain topic.
Right. So I think this is giving the parent the ability, like they're identifying an activity as a planned classroom discussion. I don't think that this is intending to address spontaneous.
Yes. I mean, I think that I understand all sides. I understand parents who want to have a say in what their student is learning, but I also have concerns over what this is ultimately doing to teachers and the teaching profession and education as a whole when we swing too far to the caution side with some of this language. And and some of this is out of our hands because of the Supreme Court case. But if our existing policy and practice of allowing students to opt out, which we've done a really good job of doing that was one of the things that we did a few years ago with the outcome of the book challenges, was making sure that parents had options to opt out. So I would like to take a little bit closer of a look to this language and see how the application of it or implementation or whatever you want to say will actually impact the educators here at Shawnee Heights, rather than just adopting blanket language because it's simply been proposed by KASB.
I would tend to agree with some of that because later on it does go in and say any activity addressing topics are known to be reasonably articulable to, or sorry, any activity addressing the topics. And that's just where I'm just concerned that's going to open us up to anything that goes on in the classroom, not knowing that it could be offensive to some. I think the wording could, some of this is good, some of this, I think we need to make sure the onus is on the parents to opt out. And I don't know that this wording does that 100%. My viewpoint is if there's a subject matter, like we've really got to put it on the parents. We can't be responsible for knowing the subject matter that they're offended by. So if there's any subject matter, we have to really press that in the wording.
So Sheila, tell me, currently these objections are not like formally collected in like a centralized system that we can easily say we've had, this is a question, do we have a system of that? I know for the library books we do, obviously, but if it's like Sarah's example where it's an English class at the high school and parent A says, you know, hey, I'd really prefer my kid not read book A during the class, do we currently catalog that in any way so that it passes with the student year over year throughout, or it's the onus is every year on the parent to kind of re-up that?
Well, and the teacher would need to communicate that with each class.
Sure.
Mrs. Bell, do you want to add on? But the teacher would need to communicate that because they're going to know the curriculum in their
Sure.
class.
I just know last time we talked about if you were adding a form in enrollment, for example, obviously that would put it in a centralized location where all the teachers could access.
That would
These are
be
the objections
annual.
of this. Yes, but these are the objections of this family. I just didn't know if it's kind of passing. Anyway,
The policy does specifically say it has to be renewed annually by the parent.
And that's not a change, that was in there. Opt-out requests must be submitted annually and are valid only for the school year in which they are submitted.
sorry, I just want to know how we're currently handling this. Like if it's a formal system or just like I email the teacher and then that's the place that record lives.
Yes, so at the high school level, and really all of the levels for books that we're doing in curriculum, if they're reading a book, they can communicate that to their teacher, and then that stays there, mostly for confidentiality purposes. So we're not oversharing information for each family. And sometimes the concern necessarily isn't about the religion or the issue, but it's more about the developmental appropriateness for a kid. And so that changes over time. If it's we don't want our kids to read these certain books, there is that form, and we do maintain a copy in the curriculum director's office, and then we keep that under kind of lock in the library, so the librarian knows that until those kids get to a new building, because all the books are different, and they've also grown quite a bit, and so then that gets redone there. But as far as the one system that we do keep is if a family at the enrollment screens for the human sexuality units at the middle school and high school, there's a screen there, and that is kept in Power School, so we know that those kids cannot participate in those discussions. So we do keep some of that, but not necessarily. I don't want my kid to read The Hate You Give specifically. That they just communicate that to the teacher at this point, and then we move on, because they're not reading that book anywhere else. So there's not really a need to pass that information on to the next grade's teacher, if that makes sense. That's a designated book. Library is more, could be at any time. So that's kept in a different way, and we are communicating that. But those activities that are done or books that are read in a classroom aren't being done in the next grade. So therefore, there's no need to transfer that information per se. If we wanted, if a family says, I don't want my kid ever exposed to anything about slavery, and that's a broader discussion, that would involve our building administrators, and then we would have some record of that and do that on a bigger scale of like a critical issue. And we have had that in the past. But most of the time, a specific activity or a specific book stays at that classroom level with that classroom teacher. If that answers your question. Okay.
Any other discussion or specific questions? And Lauren, did you have any specific questions on the IKB, or you're gonna send those?
I'll send them, but a lot of my questions kind of stem from the example that I just gave. Is I have a lot of concern. Like, for example, if a teacher is teaching a unit about the Holocaust and states, I believe, not even says I believe, just states the Holocaust was bad. Could that be misconstrued as a belief, a personal belief that has been expressed to the class? And there are students in that class who, God forbid, believe that the Holocaust didn't happen. And how could it be bad? And so what then? And then they go home and tell their parents, my teacher said this. Is that considered what is considered a personal viewpoint? If a teacher says vaccines save lives, is that considered a personal viewpoint? Because we are in a time in society where people are dismissing large bodies of research to say otherwise. So what is considered a personal viewpoint? I'm just trying to make sure that we are not inadvertently putting the onus on our teachers and implying that somehow our teachers are doing something wrong in the classroom. And I want to make sure that our policies are not reflecting that.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
So do we want, well, let me go on to the next policy.
Yeah, that's fine.
Bullying is the next policy, and the recommended change in this is on page 6. They were just removing some wording there because it was covered in the broader, it was already covered. And they were kind of trying to line that up with the statute that is mentioned. If you scroll down to the form on page 7, it says, school districts are required by federal law and KSA, so it's got Kansas statute there, and they felt like that was already covered in that. So that was the reasoning behind that wording.
What was already covered in what? So the statute cited is what covers the full definition. Is that what they're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And partly, I think I put that in an email on Friday notes. Part of that, too, had to do with the federal mandate to remove DEI wording. And so KASB was following that as well. So I will open that one up for discussion. And then we can decide if we want these to come back next in 2 weeks or if we want changes to them.
Okay, so just to clarify, it cites KSA 726311. Is that the statute that they're saying covers gender identity and expression and sexual orientation? And are we removing specifically cultural awareness because we're shying away from the word cultural?
That was the description that KASB had.
Okay. But that's the statute that they're citing has.
I think the gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, they said was covered just with the broader term. Do not discriminate based on sex. So it was just lining up that wording.
Are there any questions or additional discussion?
So I'll chime in here. So I don't believe that those terms are covered in any of in the state statutes that you had referenced. But I guess to your point though, if we're saying it's covered under sex, so just to be clear, this is just defining what demographic groups are disproportionately bullied at a higher rate based on the items listed. The items listed currently do a good representation of making sure it covers most bases, but again, it doesn't cover all bases. So do we want to keep the wording in there, or do we want to change it in such a way that it covers everything? To the point is like, you know, they're developing an understanding of certain demographic groups. Do we want to limit them to a demographic group? Or do we want to just simply say it is on the trainer's responsibility or the superintendent to make sure in the training it's covering the different demographic groups that tend to get bullied at a higher rate? Instead of trying to define what those demographic groups are and assume that we are keeping up with the list, could we change it to simply say develop on, you know, it'll be developed based off of the demographic groups that currently are disproportionately bullied, or something to that effect? Do you see what I'm saying? Where I'm trying to
Where we remove a little bit more of the
remove all the specifics. If we can't, you know, even if we did this change, we're still leaving groups out that could be bullied at a higher rate than others. You know, so I don't know which way we want to fall on this, but that's another option for us.
My opinion is in 8, I think the gender identity and expression and sexual orientation should stay. I'm okay with removing the cultural awareness. But again, I personally don't believe that falls in sex.
That's the same wrestle I'm having over here, Christy. So I agree with you.
But I'm okay with the rest of that. I just have a hard time with those words there.
So remove cultural awareness and leave everything else? Is that what
That's
you're
my
saying?
recommendation. Just, leaving that gender identity and expression and sexual orientation that was already in there. But everything else that's read on this I'm okay with removing.
I mean, I would suggest we just leave 8 unchanged, because we have a board goal that talks about being inclusive. So, I mean, if we're going to start taking away language from our board policies, we got to start looking further than that. And we focus on it because it says USD blank focuses on bullying prevention by. And one of the things we do is we develop cultural awareness and understanding that certain demographic groups are disproportionately bullied. Because arguably that cultural awareness is also being inclusive and receptive to other religious beliefs. And if we're going to adopt a board policy, ensuring that we are inclusive of those, then we should be inclusive of all.
And I kind of go back to Buck's question, though, on is that list inclusive of the disproportionately bullied group? Groups? Or are we still having a partial list? And would it be, I mean, do we have, because I was trying to go back through, I just saw the other policies listed at the bottom. Like, is it better to point to other policies that cover? Because I know we have, and I was trying to decipher if the sexual harassment one was like specific to employees or.
Yeah, because that one is under personnel.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we had a specific one to
Might be
students.
one of the J's. G-E-C. There, I bet it's one of the J's. J-G-E-C.
The exact description that KSDE or KASB had, and it was on that cover page last time, but when we split them, we had to remove it. The reasoning was as the bullying plan form that supports board policies JDDC, so that's the
Okay.
student one, GAAE, and KGC, as well as Kansas Statute 72-6147 already addresses bullying based upon sex. We removed references to gender identity and expression and sexual orientation. So it's tied in with some other policies. So if we really don't want to adopt it as recommended, we could leave it like it is. Like we currently have. If you just remove all the red, it would be like what we currently have.
I guess maybe I'm not thinking this all the way through, Lauren, but the cultural awareness specific phrase doesn't bother me too terribly much, considering all of the things that are defined within there, you know, religious beliefs being one of those things. I feel like developing an understanding, because that's essentially what the sentence is going to say now, is developing an understanding. So we're developing that same understanding. We're just not specifically defining it as cultural awareness, which I think is kind of a taboo. You know, to your point, you know, in the political climate, the world we live in today, you know, anything that is leaning in the direction of being too aware is problematic. And so I think I'm trying really hard here. So I think that, you know, those two words for me, if that creates a middle ground to where that feels more palatable for our entire, you know, audience, I think that makes sense to me. But I'm still over here, like Christy mentioned, and for me, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression are not the same thing as just, you know, just the word sex. That's a broader category. So I mean, if we're looking for an answer for me, I'm cool leaving it exactly the way it is. You know, put all the red right back where it belongs. I'm also very okay with us dropping the cultural awareness in that first sentence, but then keeping the later language. And I don't know really, this is obviously the first time that as a board member I've gone through this type of thing. So I don't really know what our options are in terms of what that looks like. But, you know, I think we can lean too heavily on trying to cover everything, just like we were just talking about with, you know, objections and things like that from families. I think if we make the language too broad, that kind of becomes Pandora's box as well. And so I feel like this is a good sampling of generally protected categories. So just for what it's worth.
So do we lean toward keeping that one the same and we won't do anything with that one?
Any other discussion on that? I did look, the other policy covers race, and that's referenced racial and disability harassment that's referenced later in this policy.
Which policy is that?
JGECA.
Yes. And I was just looking at JGEC, which is sexual harassment, and it does
doesn't
not include gender
Yeah,
identity.
I saw that too. I was thinking it might have been included there.
And I also looked at JDDC, which is our bullying policy, and it says the term bullying shall have the meaning ascribed to it in Kansas law. Kansas law defines it not in any manner that includes gender identity. So it appears just on quick glance, this may be the only place that that is actually included. And I think it's important for it to stay there.
And do we have, I believe it's an executive order, do we have any concerns with potentially being in conflict with the executive order regarding elimination of that type of language from policies? I think that is a real consideration that we have to make, whether we agree with the executive order or not. I think that that's a true consideration given what we've seen happen with other funding.
I guess my question, totally fair, but I guess my question is in practice, what changes if I remove this language and I have a student who presents that they've been bullied based on their sexual orientation, for example? In practice, if you're telling me nothing's changing, to me, we would be at that same mercy of how we're enforcing that expectation is really going to be in contradiction to that executive order as much as the actual language. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So our policy ought to match what we intend to do is how I feel. I'd like to be able to go back to policy and say we're doing exactly what the policy's asked us to.
I just think it's worth calling out, especially with federal funding being potentially tied to that. So I think it would be just prudent to say out loud.
I'm not at all opposed to leaving the language in, but I would just appreciate seeing. I know we pay KASB for make sure that our policies typically are in line with the law and so forth. So as long as they're not, I guess, opposed to us having a different policy, I know this is their recommendation, but as long as we're not exposing ourselves and legally by not just this policy but others by breaking away from their recommendations, that's where my mind is at.
And I had in last Friday's Friday, no, it's not this Friday, but right after this last board meeting, I had written something about this one and KASB's recommendation on it. So I can reread that, or you can go back and look at that. But it goes right along with this. That was part of why they were recommending this.
Okay.
So it was just a discussion item. Kind of wanted to allow some time. But I just pulled up Friday notes from 2 weeks ago. Their recommendations aligned with recent legislative actions, removing DEI-related terminology, following the charge of the U.S. Department of Ed. While the district may choose to retain that current language, just be aware the inclusion could potentially draw review from the Attorney General's Office, the U.S. Department of Ed, or the Department of Justice. So, and that's in your Friday notes on February 6th, if you want to go back and look at that. And I got that straight from KASB.
Okay. Thanks.
So, something to think about.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? I think that was this last one that was in the discussion bucket.
It was.
Okay. Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to questions and comments from the Board of Education members, if you have any breath left in you.
Real quick on that. So being new, what's the process that we look at going forward? I know Lauren may have some additional questions. Are we going to then is there going to be a new recommendation? Is there going to be, how do we want to handle? I mean, obviously the one that if we chose to not change the one, then there would be no need to us to really vote on anything related to that. If the other one's going to come back slightly different, will you provide that to us then, I guess? Is that how that works?
Since I've been here, we haven't had one that we couldn't reach an agreement on like this. I'm just going to be honest, we've typically followed KASB's recommendation because it processes through their attorneys. So we just want to be a little careful about writing our own when you start saying, let's add other things to it. I think we're not all attorneys, so that doesn't mean we'd have to adopt everything they say, but I don't know that we want to start writing our own totally. We can see if you have questions you still want to submit on the one, or I guess we've got two, and then we can bring them back and have some discussion and vote eventually on them.
Historically, there have been times when we have written our own policies.
And
And
send it back to them to.
yeah,
I think we want someone
some
to
of
look
them
it
have
over.
been reviewed, yes. There are districts in the state who do not pass any of KASB's policies. They have all of their own, so it is possible.
Fair. Yeah, I was just thinking on those, yeah.
So we won't move it to an approve item for next time. We can continue some discussion on it. We'll see what questions, if you have questions you want answered before the next time. I don't know that there's much more I can get on the bullying one. That was KASB's response on that one at this point. So if you have questions, send them to me. I'm happy to try and get them answered before the next board meeting.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
Have there been at the, like, I know other board members attend some of the other meetings or some other groups and stuff like that. Is this the right time to bring that before the rest of the group? Like, if you attended a meeting, let's just say it was foundation, and they said, hey, we're gonna change our foundation breakfast to, a different time. Like, is that what we could bring in this time frame? Just like I'm kind of curious on getting reports back. Since we all can't attend every one of these events, I feel like we should be getting reports back from just at least the major items on stuff. And admittedly, I'm not on anything yet. So I don't have anything to report. But
So I still have nothing to share.
but I just thought this, the first couple of meetings we've been silent on this part, but if there is something, I feel like this is a good time to just give us a highlight of what was said at some of these different meetings so that we can all at least be on the same page since we all can't attend all of them.
Well, I have no committee to report on, but I will say I attended Girls Regional Wrestling on Saturday. That was my Valentine's Day gift to myself. It was very fun and very exciting. All 14 of our girls qualified for state. We had 2 girls that won their weight class. It was just such an exciting day. And my favorite part of the day was watching Coach Singer and the way that he approaches girls or wrestlers in general when they come off the mat after a tough loss. And the way that you can just really tell that he's, kind of talking them through and really coaching them up and being really positive with them. That's just really, really heartwarming. I know that's a hard time for those kids, and just seeing him be so consistent with them was just so nice. And all of the coaches do it, but it really stood out to me on Saturday. But it was a really exciting, fun day, and it's going to be fun to get to see them all go. So congratulations to our girls wrestlers.
Were you going to say something?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I was just going to say my 4th grader competed at the county spelling bee a couple weeks ago, and I noticed that we don't have any spellers. We didn't have any spellers from the middle school. And actually, the winner was a middle schooler from Auburn Washburn. And so wanted to put a plug in that if we could start getting some of our middle school spellers into it, maybe we could break Auburn Washburn's 7-year streak. Yeah. That would be great. Yeah, if we could get it going in the middle school. So, thank you.
It's going to make a wisecrack. Sounds like Lauren's got a wordsmith in her family, and I'm sure he'll be schooled on the proper use of the Oxford comma, and
Oxford commerce is strong in my house. Yeah, that is true.
Any other polite harassment or commentary?
I'll just give you kudos for getting your kid to go to the County Bee because my kid was a 2-time spelling bee championship at Tecumseh South, champion at Tecumseh South, and flat refused. Not happening. Not in front of all those people. So good for her for getting up there.
All right, back to the agenda. We are going to go into an executive session to discuss confidential student information pursuant to the exception relating to actions adversely or favorably affecting a student under the Kansas Open Meetings Act. And the open meeting will resume at, what time is it? 8:17. I would like to have Miss Meggers and Miss O'Brien accompany us, and I think we could.
I'll second that.
Motion by Sarah, second by Christy. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you. I would entertain a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Christy, second by Sarah. All in favor?